welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul. My co-host Justin Baker joining me as we talk playoff races, and we're going to jump right into the Eastern Conference. But before we do, Justin, what is up? How are you?
I'm great, man. A little better than you this morning. I don't know if you want to tell our listeners what happened to you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think we probably would have started recording at, I don't know, like a good solid 8, maybe 8:30 this morning even, and 9 o'clock at least, which normally, you know, if you don't pay attention to when we record, I guess we're usually in the evening after work time. Both of us have the day off today, so we're doing it in a morning show, and my power went out at 7 a.m., so I lit a nice fire in the fireplace and pulled the couch over and kept it going, and didn't expect it to come back on till 1, but here we are, 9:45 a.m. Thank you, DTE, which is Michigan's power company, for fixing my power very quickly, as it is 9 degrees outside. And if you are a Celsius man or woman, that's minus 13 degrees Celsius. Apparently the feels like is minus 14 degrees Fahrenheit, which is minus 25 Celsius. So it's cold as balls. I did look outside at my ducks and my chicken. They have a coop, don't worry. They have like a little place to hide, but they were all huddled around the heat lamp, just keeping warm. So
I bet. I tried to let my dog out this morning, and he went one step outside and instantly came back in and was like, nope, no part of this.
I'll hold it.
Yep.
Oh, geez. Yeah, they are, I'll say, just chickens. They're just chickens and a couple ducks, but I always, like, you feel bad. You're looking out there and you're like, oh my gosh, it's so cold out. And they're just hanging out there, but they're fine. You know, they have the ability to survive some pretty damn cold weather. As long as, I mean, if it was 9 degrees every day, all day, they would probably die. It would be a really nice freezer for me, though. I would be able to, just go out there and defrost them, I guess. But I would prefer the eggs. I'd prefer the eggs from them. They are my egg layers. Okay, anyways. So we're going to talk playoff races. And we both thought it would be best to start with the Metropolitan Division because it really is this division has kind of, I'll say, like, even though we knew that there were some really good teams in here, this division has just overcome all expectations of what I think it would be as a whole, as this division is just fantastic. I know they have the two worst teams in the division, especially Columbus, who's coming in at 22 points right now. They've lost 5 in a row now, so of course that is going to boost the top of the division. But man, there are 6 teams in this division vying for 5 playoff spots, and that sure looks like the way it's going to go. I don't think that there's much to be said that is there going to be an Atlantic wild card team? I don't think so. Where are you at with that? Let's start there. Do you think it's 5 for the Metro, or do you think maybe Detroit or Buffalo can catch one of these wild cards?
I mean, the way things are going, and we'll talk about Florida later too, but it doesn't look like it, right? I mean, it looks like we're going to get a 5-3 here. I mean, all the teams in the Metro, but 6 of those teams you talked about are just buzzing along like nothing's gone wrong. And man, I mean, you look at them from top to bottom there. I mean, Philly even, granted their record doesn't really show it, they still compete night in and night out, which is fun to watch. I know John Tort's teams have always just been competitive, but the wins and losses may not be what he wants. But
and they're giving their younger guys opportunities, which is always, if you're going to lose, at least give young guys opportunities, right? Like Owen Tippett's getting in there some more. And,
loving that.
And Morgan Frost is starting to play better. They almost came back against the Leafs yesterday afternoon at their 2 p.m. game. It was a dominated Leafs game, but the Flyers kind of they managed to squeak in a couple there at the end and make it a game. But the Flyers certainly are not. They're not
pushovers.
Good, but when you look at the Western Conference and you go, Chicago has 18 points, Anaheim 21, but Anaheim's only won 3 games in regulation, and 2 of those came in the last week. So before that, they had 1. And you've got Arizona at 25, San Jose at 28. The 6th place team in the West is the only team that has more points than the Flyers, who are 9th in the East. So in that sense, you're seeing a lot more balance and a lot less of a low end in the Eastern Conference. And, I mean, frankly, when you look at Columbus, I would say that I still put Columbus above all 4 of those teams in the West. At least because, Columbus has had a lot of injuries. Werenski's out for the season. What are you going to do when your top defenseman is out and you don't have the greatest defense to begin with? And yet Columbus, I still think, for my money, I'd rather watch them than Chicago, Anaheim. But just for the good Johnny Gaudreau factor, I guess. And Laine. And Laine's been injured a lot, too. That doesn't help.
Yeah, I definitely don't disagree with you. I think that Columbus, for my money, is much more entertaining. And, if they got halfway decent goaltending, considering their, injuries on defense, they might actually be, even more, obviously more competitive, but, they might be, hopping Philadelphia here at this point, or might be somewhat competitive for a spot. So,
in fairness, Tarasov has been pretty solid for them. His goals against average looks bad, but a .913 save percentage in 11 games, 355 shots against in 11 games, and he started 10. So you're looking at 35 shots a game, and your save percentage is .913. That's fantastic. If he could continue doing that, he's well. I think the league average this year is .906 or .907 for save percentage. So he's well above that. He's been playing really good. 2-7-1. The record looks terrible, but that's not his fault. He can only do what he does with. He can only stop pucks. But I picked him up on my fantasy team because he gets 30 shots a night, and even if he lets in 3 of them, I still get decent amount of points out of him. Tarasov looks pretty decent. I don't know if he has staying power, especially with both Korpisalo and Merzlikins, but we'll get off the Columbus train since we're talking about the playoffs. We already did their funeral in our last show. You can go listen to the Blue Jackets funeral in our last show. Subscribe to the show, do all that stuff. But as far as that Eastern Conference playoff race goes in the Metro, I think we're both there. 5 teams from the Metro. Let's jump into the actual races, because as far as I see it, I think there's a few interesting ones. And of course, you've got the Islanders and the Capitals that are kind of right there. I think that's probably something that we're going to see. It'll be those 2 teams battling it out for that final wild card spot. Because as far as the Rangers are concerned, for me, I don't see them slipping behind. Like, they're 8-2 in their last 10, and they really just got going. Their home record, they've been just terrible at home to start the year, 8-6-4. So really, they're 8-10 at home, and I expect that to be much better. Therefore, I expect the Rangers to probably be more in a race for that 3 or 2 spot in the Metro, and let these other 2 teams battle it out for the final wild card spot.
Yeah, I have no worries about the Rangers either. I think, again, Gerard Gallant kind of mixing up the lines here. The last few games, you see Kreider and Zibanejad no longer playing together. You've got, Philip Hedl playing alongside Panarin. It's interesting, the combinations that they've managed to come up with there, but it seems to be working for them. I know they look like a more rejuvenated, energized team. And, when you've got Adam Fox just putting up the numbers he is, and Shesterkin back on defense or in goal, with that defense they have, I'm not too worried about their playoff chances. They'll figure it out, and especially with the home record too. They'll get that going because it's Madison Square Garden. You'll get some wins there. I don't think they have to worry too much about that.
Yeah, and Shesterkin has won 7 of his last 8 games, and he has looked very good in that little run. He's only allowed 4 goals once, and they actually won that game, which is encouraging. You as a as a goaltender who I mean, let's face it, top 3 goaltender in the NHL, had a rough start to the year. You know, I think that a lot of people were a little bit concerned early on, and it kind of seemed unfounded. Like, well, it's fine. Yeah, I know he let in 4 goals against Anaheim early. He wasn't looking like the Vezina candidate that we had all gotten used to. But you know what? When your team's not scoring in front of you, it's really hard, and there's a lot of pressure. Whereas last year, his team was scoring in bundles in front of him. And yes, was he bailing them out? Absolutely, because they were allowing some incredibly high danger chances. They've actually been better about that this year, and maybe it's taken Shesterkin just a minute to get used to a little bit less. There's been some games where, I mean, their last game against the Islanders, he only had 18 shots on goal against them. They've been a little better in front of them, and that sometimes can actually throw a goaltender off. I don't know. You tell me, as a goaltender, you go from seeing a lot of pucks every night to, you know, these 26, 20 shot, 23 shots in a game. Are you feeling like you're not getting the same amount of touches? Is there something to that?
Well, I mean, it's all about developing a rhythm, right? I mean, a lot of goaltenders, I mean, there are some goaltenders, right, that do well with low shots. I mean, I remember growing up watching Chris Osgood. He was one of those that, you know, always fared well when the Wings were only giving up, you know, 20, 22 shots a game. He seemed to, you know, handle it quite well, and he could go, you know, 15 minutes without seeing a shot and be fine. Whereas a lot of other goaltenders, right, and I think Shesterkin kind of falls in this category where I think as they get more shots on them in a game, they get their rhythm going. They have just sort of this, I don't know what it is, but they get this mojo where, you know, they put up that brick wall, and they tend to play better when they're getting 30 to 35 shots at least a game.
Yeah, I think of Roberto Luongo. There's a guy who was so used to tons of shots in Florida, and then Vancouver, even in Vancouver, lots of shots against. I think of Curtis Joseph, who was on a lot of bad teams. There's a guy who definitely, I'm sure if we could go back, I don't know that we can. I don't think we can go back and figure out goals saved above expected for a goalie in the 90s. But I would have to imagine that he would be. There were some years where he would be at the top, or probably second to Dominik Hasek every single year, because that's not Cujo's fault. That's just because Hasek was redonkulous. Hasek, like, we forget about Dominik Hasek, and I think the best comparison to right now is we all look at Connor McDavid and go, how is he so much better than everyone else? And that was Dominik Hasek. How is this guy so much better? Like, it's not even close. It was not close for a good probably 8 years. Hasek was like, it wasn't close because his team was so bad. His team really was not good.
They had Danny Briere.
He literally took a team to the Stanley Cup Finals and came within 2 wins of like an OT goal and then a win away from a Stanley Cup. And I mean, the team in front of them, it's not as if they didn't have anything, but that Buffalo team was built around Dominik Hasek. They had some good defenders, and they made sure that they could maybe get the 1 or 2 goals in the playoffs, and that was all they needed to win. I don't know that we'll ever see anything like that again, especially the way the game's going. Knock on wood, because I really don't want to see a lot of 1-0 games.
Right.
Again, I like the speed at which the league is at, but anyways, playoff races. Where do you see the top of that metro? We know Carolina just overtook New Jersey with their 7th win in a row. They have been absolutely on fire. New Jersey, on the other hand, they finally break, I think, 6-game losing streak. So New Jersey, hopefully turning the ship here back into winning mode. But where do you see the top of this division going? And I'd say Pittsburgh is still in the conversation here because they have been 8-1-1 in their last 10. They have been great too.
Yeah, I mean, Carolina's a no-brainer, right? They're going to be at the top of this division. I think between them and the Rangers are another team that I think are going to, continue to get their shit together and figure it out. I think there's just too much talent on that Ranger team and too good of a goaltender not to be at the top of that division, where I think they'll end up at the end of the year. Now, the third team and where I think they're going to end up finishing is Pittsburgh again at number 3. So I would love to see another Rangers Penguins matchup in the playoffs. I think that would just be ideal, and fingers crossed we have no goaltending injuries for Pittsburgh. So
seriously. Yeah, well, I mean, also hopefully they can play Casey DeSmith a little bit more, and we don't have to deal with, if Tristan Jarry playing too much, right?
Well, and that's the thing too. I think Pittsburgh's actually getting some good backup goaltending this year out of Casey DeSmith, where they really were a little unsure about him last year. His goaltending numbers weren't the best, and so you always had to wonder, like, okay, crap, besides the back-to-backs, are we ever going to play this guy any other game? And so now I think there's a little bit more confidence. I think the team in front of him is playing a little bit better. They've got their mojo going, so I think again, you can never count out Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin and this Penguins team as long as they're healthy and in it. So
especially when your best defenseman just strokes out and then comes back a few days later and is scoring goals, and
the team seems to only play better when he's gone. So, which I'm sure you as a Maple Leafs fan, you're probably well aware of how well the Leafs are playing without Morgan Riley. But sure. Which is crazy to me, because when you look at all his underlying advanced numbers, right, Morgan Riley actually makes this team so much better.
Oh yeah,
but for some reason,
which is unbelievable how well they're doing without him.
Exactly. So, I think Pittsburgh's in the same boat where, with or without Letang, they're still going to thrive. And so I think those 3 teams will be there at the top now. Surprisingly enough, though, Washington to me is the biggest shocker, because, I figured, okay, I wasn't necessarily saying Ovi's going to slow down, but I figured with all the injuries between Tom Wilson, Backstrom, a mediocre defense outside of John Carlson, I thought, okay, well, you know what? It's time this team's going to drop off. I think New Jersey, we all thought was going to be better, and they have been. I figured the Islanders would probably bounce back a little bit from where they were last year. And so, to me, the odd man out was Washington. But they're 8-2-0 in their last 10. They seem to not be giving a crap, and they don't really care who's in goal either, because Charlie Lindgren has been a dream for them. I mean, it seemed like he could never lose.
Also, I mean, Charlie Lindgren was really good last year in the American Hockey League. I mean, this isn't for those of you who pay attention to some American Hockey League and to those up and coming goalies. I mean, Charlie Lindgren it's not as if he's this 20-year-old prospect coming up. He's 29 years old, but he's paid his dues. I mean, I know he was in St. Louis last year, and he was great for the Blues in a very limited start. I mean, he started 4 games, played in 5. He was 5-0, 1.22 goals against, and a .958 save percentage. Just saying. Yeah. That's good.
He was good when he was in Montreal. I mean,
yeah, he wasn't bad.
They had terrible teams in front of him, and he put up some good numbers. So, I mean, you know what? I was excited to see him in a backup role. I think he's earned it for Washington. But, when Kemper went down, I figured, okay, well, there go the Capitals, right? I don't think Charlie Lindgren can keep the team afloat for too long, but I am eating my own words, because he has proved me wrong. And it was a good thing, too, because I picked him up in fantasy, and he bought me a couple points, so that was nice.
Here's the funny thing is that really Darcy Kemper has better numbers than Charlie Lindgren as far as save percentage. Both of them are above 9, or Lindgren's at 91 and Kemper's at 916. He's looked really good. He actually has a lower goals against as well, but his record's 9-9, and Lindgren's is 9-4. So I think some of this. I think that Washington is kind of starting to pop back up now. I think they just had a slow start, which they often have had slow starts, and so I think even though Kemper played really well, it just wasn't showing up on the wins side of things. I think now that he's back, he's healthy, I think you're going to see him become the starter. But what this does for Washington, I mean, if you can rely on Charlie Lindgren every third game, that's incredible for Darcy Kemper. Because now Kemper, at the end of the year, maybe he gets into 45 games. Let's see, how many games are left? 50, around 50 games. So if he plays, let's say he plays 30 of the 50, then he's playing in 51 games. And I think that's probably ideal for a guy like Kemper. And then he's going to come in and, your hope is that he plays in 20-plus playoff games and you can somehow ride this, ride the wave. But I think that this is ideal. You get Charlie Lindgren and you really trust him to play almost as well as your number one, and frankly, still playing giving you above average goaltending. That's all you can ask for.
Yeah. Not to mention, I think, Dylan Strome has come in. He's definitely filled in where I think they were going to lack as far as the center depth position. I think he's proved me wrong, and I think he's going to cash in majorly in this offseason. I don't think Washington's going to be able to afford him, so you'll probably see him get dealt to a team because, at $3.5 million and putting up 24 points in 35 games has been a steal. So, I think, I think he'll definitely probably, garner closer to $5 and $6 million bucks, I think, on a 2 or 3 year deal. I think some team is probably going to give him that money, and so he'll probably get dealt as an RFA. But outside of that, I think this Washington team as a whole, though, has, again, with all the injuries and, the goaltending situation, I think outside of that, really they've had a little bit more motivation lately, especially with Ovi, crossing that 800 goal milestone. I think there's been that motivation to get him there and to play hard for him, because it's one thing for, just to, play just to be playing for playing's sake, but they have something extra now. It's not necessarily like, okay, cool, we have to, hold on to first place, or we have to get in. Really, they're playing for Obi right now, and it looks like, they want to get him.
And it's working.
It's working, and I was a little bummed that they were unable to get him to tie Gordie Howe with the
against
goals
the
they're
Red Wings.
Playing against Detroit. That was a bummer, but he'll get there. I know. By the end of the year, he'll surpass Gordie, which will be great for the game.
The cool thing that I know they went to the game after that. They played in Ottawa. He didn't score again. I want him to do this at home. I want him to tie the record. I want him to break the record in Washington. Like, no matter where he does it, fans are going to appreciate what he's doing. Like, they're going to give him a standing ovation. It doesn't matter when this goal comes, even if it's a tough, heartbreaking goal, you're still going to go, well, damn. All right, we'll give him kudos. But I want to see this goal happen at home. And, there's a reason why the NHL Network is picking up Washington against Winnipeg tonight.
Right.
They want this game. They want people to tune in, and I certainly will be. That's the game I'm watching tonight. I want to see if Ovechkin can break that or tie the record, and we'll see. But yes, and the other thing for Washington, we didn't know if Nick Backstrom was going to play. It looks, Backstrom and Wilson travel with the team, and suddenly there's some hope. Those two guys coming back. This is a vastly different team with those two guys in the lineup. A vastly different team. Suddenly you've got a number. Where do we put Backstrom if he's healthy? Do we kind of put him in that, like, at this point in his career, maybe in that, like, Ryan Johansson kind of vibe? When Ryan Johansson is good, like that, almost a number one center, like a 1B kind of guy where you're like, well, I sure hope we have another center, which is Kuznetsov, so it ends up being okay. Like, he doesn't have to take all those heavy minutes as the top center. The other thing is I do wonder, Backstrom sticks around here for a while. He has another 2 years after this on his contract at $9.2 million. I wonder if they move him to the wing. If it comes to that, if they need to move him to the wing to be able to have somebody who can play a little bit tougher minutes down the middle. But if they get him back and they get Tom Wilson back, I don't know that I'm looking at this team going, I sure hope that they can hold off the Islanders. With the goaltending they're getting, I'm going, I wonder, is there a team they can jump? And the one team that I think maybe is a falsehood up where they are is the New Jersey Devils. Like, have we overrated them because of what they were able to do early on in the season? teams are starting to kind of figure them out a little bit. And will the Devils the Devils aren't missing the playoffs at this point. I don't see that. But maybe they end up being a team that they kind of finish where we talked at the beginning of the season. Like, hey, this team, we really think they could compete for a wild card. And maybe they hit those expectations and end up in a wild card spot. Where do you think that New Jersey, what do you think of New Jersey at 2 right now?
Yeah, I think, coming into the season, I think we all thought that New Jersey could push for a bubble spot, a playoff, wild card berth. Right. And so, yeah, I'm with you. I think they were just a little overrated. I think this team is so fast that it kind of took the league by storm, and I don't think anybody really knew how to handle it. But now you see, especially, I watched that game against Carolina, and you really learn that if you clog up the neutral zone and really play a more dump and chase style bang up hockey, you can slow this Devils team down, and then they really can't produce. And so, to me, I think that's the way you're going to see a lot of teams play down the stretch. And so I think the speed is only going to get you so far, and I think it's good enough to where it'll get them in the playoffs. But, where it gets them as far as the standings are concerned, I think New Jersey's probably going to end up, finishing around that 4 or 5 spot. I think they'll get in with one of those last 2 wild card spots because I think, again, Carolina and New York are just too good. I think Pittsburgh, they know how to win, and they're battle-tested, so they'll continue to do their thing, and I think eventually they'll hop New Jersey. Now, whether or not Washington can jump them is a different story. I don't trust that defense enough, and I don't think beyond, their top 5 or, 4 forwards, I don't think they have enough firepower to really, continue a lot of success. So I think Washington will struggle, but I think they'll get in. But where they finish again, whether or not they hop New Jersey is a whole nother story. I think New Jersey is they're too fun offensively to, not figure it out. I think, eventually Lindy Ruff and Andrew Burnett are going to figure out a way to use the speed to their advantage and carve out a few more wins to where they can stay afloat in this conference. Okay.
When I look at Washington, I don't think that they really, they just want to make the playoffs. I don't think they care where they finish. When I think New Jersey, I see a team that most teams cannot keep up with them. Carolina, like you said, with the dump and chase, Carolina can do it because they have that's how they play anyways. They're really there's barely any teams left that exclusively dump and chase, and Carolina does it, but they are very effective at it because of their speed and their skill, and the way that they move through the neutral zone. It opens up opportunities, but they are dumping it more often than they're carrying it in, whereas pretty much every other team in the NHL is carrying it in more often than they're dumping it. So I think against New Jersey, that's it's killer for them, right? Because it's the one thing that they're really not prepared for is a dump and chase team, which frankly is why Carolina is so effective. Because you play against them, and all of a sudden you have to go, wait, what? Like, this team does things totally different than most of the other teams in the NHL. And I think that's where if those two teams play each other, that's going to be tough for New Jersey to overcome. But against a lot of the other teams in the NHL, New Jersey is just so fast. So that's why I don't expect New Jersey to fall too far. But I do think that a lot of these high-end, really talented teams can find a way to slow New Jersey down a bit. But I think New Jersey's going to keep eating up these bottom feeders, and there's only going to be more and more bottom feeders as we near the trade deadline. I think you're already probably starting to see some things brew on the trade horizon. The Christmas trade freeze started Tuesday and goes through Monday of next week, and then next Tuesday it's wide open again. And I think I got to think there's a lot of discussions going on right now, and I mean there's definitely teams that are worlds out of it at this point, and they've got to be trying to capitalize on that because you're going to get more right now than you would at the deadline for some of these players, especially the ones that are making less than $5 million a year, where these teams can fit them under the cap right away by eating half. So I think there's probably some things brewing. And once those bottom feeder teams get worse, well, that only means that teams at the top are winning more often, and that'll circle back. So as far as that playoff race in the Metro goes, let me get your, now with 50 games left, what's your prediction for how this division's gonna fall out? Go one through wild cards.
All right, 1 through wild cards. I think you're going to see Carolina, New York up at the top. I think 1-2, right? I think Carolina finds a way to continue their success. They're getting amazing goaltending, so I don't think they're going to falter too much or drop off at all from that one spot. I think at number 2, I think the Rangers are going to sit pretty there. They've got too much talent up front, I think, in that goaltending. Number 3, now that's where things get a little interesting. I'm going to play devil's advocate because, again, I think I like when you say they're going to feed off the bottom feeders of this league here, and I think New Jersey will find a way to finish at 3. I think Pittsburgh you'll see at number 4 at the first wild card, and the Washington Capitals at number 5 at the second wild card.
Okay, I'm going I'm going to go Carolina at the top. I think that's what we had in our preseason rankings anyways. I'm going actually Pittsburgh number 2, the Rangers number 3, Jersey top wild card, Washington into the next spot. Is there a reason you don't think that the Islanders can do this? Both of us left the Islanders out of this. They're only 2 points back with the game in hand on the Capitals. What do you think the Islanders have to do, I guess, to turn this around? Because at one point they were somewhat securely in a playoff spot, and they went on a little bender, and Washington has ripped back 8-2 in their last 10, winning 3 in a row too. Do you think there's a chance the Islanders get in, or do you think that this has been kind of a faux race with the Islanders?
Yeah, I think they're kind of a little flash in the pan, right? I think they came out of the gate excited and glad not to be on a 25-game road trip to start the year.
Sure.
But more realistically, I think the problem with this team is they just don't have a lot of depth up front in the forward position. And I think, when you look at, really obviously their top 3 guys, Brock Nelson's their number 1 scorer right now. And I think that to me is a problem, right? When you have to rely on a guy like that to be your top scorer, you're going to have problems. And no offense to Brock Nelson, I think he's a great middle six complimentary player.
Brock Nelson actually just texted me and said, "Fuck you."
Yeah. But I think more realistically, right, they need another high-end guy to play with Matthew Barzal who can produce. And I think if you can find somebody who can, finish, because Matthew Barzal is clearly not a finisher with only 5 goals through 34 games. But I mean, again, I think that's where, when you look at this Islander team, that's where the fault is, right? They just don't have a lot of scoring outside of Brock Nelson and Anders Lee. And so when you don't have a lot of depth scoring, you're going to struggle against some of these other teams at the top when it comes to those grinding games towards the end of the year, closer to the deadline. And I think, the Islanders might stay afloat because they have such good goaltending and such good defense that they'll stay close. But ultimately, once you get towards that grind at the end of the year, I don't think they have enough firepower up front to be a real competitor.
Okay. All right. With the Islanders, I think my one caveat would be, let's see what they do here in the next month. If they go out and they acquire a scorer or do something on the trade market to make this team better, I think we've all been waiting for that, right? Like they didn't do anything in the summer, and we're sitting here going, all right, they have, they've got $3.3 million in cap space, which is rare for a team right now. For a team that's contending for the playoffs to have this much cap space, it seems like when are you gonna pull the trigger? When are you gonna make a trade? They have a ton of guys. Like everyone on their team makes $5 million,
right?
And you're wondering when is this gonna break? When are you gonna do something? And it still has not happened. And I guess I can't go as far to say well, Lou's lost it because then he'll do, he'll make an incredible trade and I'll look dumb. But the longer this goes, you have to wonder, what is Lou Lamoriello doing, and to what end is your patience? Patience eventually wears thin if you don't produce, and that's what happened in New Jersey. If you remember when Lou Lamoriello was, I guess, not re-signed, he went to Toronto. People just lost patience with Lou Lamoriello. Like, people were just kind of over it, and they wanted a fresh voice and a different vantage point from that position. And I wonder how much longer you have to not go. I mean, come on, like, we got to do something. We haven't really made any significant moves other than Alex Romanov, which Alex Romanov is fine, but he's not a game changer. And here we are, still waiting. And the longer that we have to wait, I think the more that you just go, I mean, do we need to bring someone else in here to kind of shake things up and make things modern? Because this Islanders team is definitely not constructed in any modern, like, I'll say the last 5 years, how everything's gotten much faster. This team really isn't constructed that way, other than like Barzal, which he sort of is a happy accident for Lou Lamoriello.
Right, he really is. And I mean, look, one name I see on the trade block right now that would fit in really, I think, nice with Barzal is a Brock Besser, right? You hear his name tossed around. His agent's been making calls, and so how good would that guy look alongside Matthew Barzal? So if you're Lou Lamoriello and you're trying to save your job, right, you can't rely on Zach Parise to do the scoring for you. So go out there and make a move for a guy like that. You have to have space to do it.
Oh, that's funny.
Right, that was his big offseason move, right? Re-sign Zach Parise. So.
Re-sign him. Yeah, I will give the Islanders this. Sorokin, I mean, he's been incredible. The guy is 10-11-1. He's got a .924 save percentage. I mean, the only guys ahead of him, Matt Murray, who plays on quite possibly. This might sound crazy unless you've really been watching. Maybe the best defensive hockey team in the best defensive. Wow. The coffee is kicking in, and suddenly I can't say that.
You're too excited for this Maple Leafs team.
I was going to make a Chris Letang joke, and it was going to be distasteful. It was going to be distasteful, so I won't. The Leafs maybe have the best team defense in all of hockey right now. Look at who is playing on the back end for them right now, and they are second in the league in goals against. They've played more games than all the teams that are close to them in that goals against category. And my goodness, like, their team defense is incredible. You look at both of their goaltenders, Samsonov and Murray. Murray a .925, Samsonov a .924 save percentage. These two guys have been fantastic. I mean, they made Eric Shalgren look decent. That's a small miracle. No, Eric Shalgren's not that bad, but they made him look fine. And you look at I don't know why I was because I'm talking about Sorokin at a .924 save percentage on a team that they just can't score in front of them. And the only other goalies ahead outside of the Maple Leafs goalies, Connor Hellebuck, which we all know he's a god, and Linus Ullmark, who's blowing everyone away with a .937 save percentage. I have him in one of my fantasy leagues, and I swear he helps me win every week because he puts up big numbers when he plays. And so I look at that and I just go, I mean, what you're wasting. Who could be a Vezina Trophy candidate? Now, are you going to be a Vezina Trophy candidate if you have a losing record? Hell no. At 10-11, no way. You're gonna go other guys, but he maybe has been the most important goaltender in the NHL because I guess they do also have Varlamov, who's at 919, whose winning record is much better, 8-3-1. But besides the point, Sorokin and Varlamov both very good. So I mean, they are playing their hand with their goaltenders well. There's just no one to score goals in front of them, which is a little depressing. Like it's funny, isn't it funny how so many teams with good goalies they just can't score goals? What's up with that?
Right.
So, anyways, I digress. Islanders They're going to miss the playoffs unless they go out and make a move here, probably in the next 4 to 6 weeks, and can rattle off some wins here. Otherwise, I just think the chase for Gretzky's record is something we have never seen ever in the league. Like, I guess with Gretzky chasing how, it was more like when as opposed to will this happen if this happens. No, this has always been like, well, when Gretzky breaks the record, and then he went and he did it, and it was incredible, but everyone knew it was going to happen. The Ovechkin thing, I mean, it wasn't even that long ago. I saw an interview and someone asked him this question, do you think you'll break Gretzky's record? And he was like, who the hell does this guy think he is asking me this question? That's a ridiculous question. And now Ovechkin has freaking trademarked chase for what's the chase for, or they, do you know what that is? What's his trademark thing? Chase for, sorry. Now I just typed in Ovechkin. Ovechkin chase for, he trademarked something. That's
wild. Well, while you're looking that up,
it's the Great Chase, but the word great is spelled GR8. He trademarked it. Yeah, That's Great awesome. Chase. So, I mean, tell me that is not, if you were on his team, you're going, holy crap, I could be a part of this. I might assist on some of the greatest, most remembered goals in the history of the league. You're not telling me that you're not going to elevate your game for that? I don't think we've ever seen anything like this in the history of the league because of how big the league is now and how important Gretzky's records are and how unbreakable it seemed even 3-4 years ago. I think this is just, I think people are going to go to Washington to be a part of this. I would. If I was a free agent, I'd go, yeah, I'll sign a 1 year or a 2 year deal to be in Washington and to have the chance to play with Ovi on the power play or something like that. If I could be the guy dishing him the puck for that goal, I mean, let's be honest. We all hope that it's, obviously, 8:02, it's not going to be Backstrom. He's not going to be back in time unless Ovi's waiting for him. Maybe that's why he hasn't scored yet. But for that 8:95, 8:94, if that is Backstrom to Ovi, and it's that one-timer goal, it's reminiscent of when Brett Hull scored 700. I think when Brett Hull scored 700, it was his, Brett Hull had the Ovi goal was Brett Hull's before Ovi ever was around. Let's be honest. Brett Hull was taking that shot long before Ovechkin was even in diapers. And his 700th goal came that way. Or maybe it was, I'm pretty sure it was the 700th. That was when he was on the Red Wings. It came that way, and it was just so fitting. And I hope that happens for Ovechkin. It'd be fun. Okay, I'm all done.
I will say, though, on the Ovi thing, though, it is wild, and I think, I saw an interesting stat that was basically, detailing the amount of days it took him to go from 300 to 400 goals and 600 to 700, and it was basically the same amount of time. And I look back and I'm like, you know what? We had a half season basically because of COVID. We had a whole entire missed season during Ovi's career thanks to the lockout, and another half season because of the lockout. And I wonder, I'm like, maybe he would have already broken it at this point had we not had all that missed time, or at least he would be pretty damn close at this point.
Yeah, you're talking 82 games missed, and then another 34 games missed from the lockout because they played 48 games. So there you're at 116 games, and then about 20 games missed. So you're at 126 games. That's probably good for at least 50 goals. We'll go really conservative, but that was like in his prime. That would have been his rookie year. In fairness, I'll say the lockout, the first lockout year. I'm not sure what would have happened.
I think he could have at least got 35.
30, yeah. I mean, the league changed so much when he came back, right? Like during his rookie season, they changed so many rules, and a lot changed. And they called so many penalties. That's like the highest scoring season of this era. Is that first year coming out?
52 power play points.
Right. So I will say, I mean, that certainly played a factor. But let's say conservatively that's 50 goals. I mean, suddenly right now he's sitting at 850 goals now. And you're going, well, next season he'll break the record.
Right.
So, yeah, you're right. I mean,
he's a machine.
Yeah. Now, hey, there's a reason things happen. You never know. A guy suffers an ACL injury in one of those years, and he's never the same. You just don't know. So there's those, what if he had played more games? Well, what if he had gotten hurt in one of those games? Like, there's always that, too, which is a thing. Okay. I know we've spent 45 minutes on the Metropolitan Division, which is I'm fine with. I think we're just going to stick with the Eastern Conference playoff races for this show, and we can do a Western Conference show where we talk about those races, because I think we should probably give the same amount of time to those. But let's go over to the Atlantic and talk Atlantic, and then that way, we'll be well over an hour by the time we're done. So nobody's tweeted at you and said that they're angry about a show being longer than an hour?
Not yet.
Okay, all right. Let's talk Detroit. I know they're your team. I want to give you some time. We didn't talk about them in the funeral for last week's show. They were right on the bubble. They're 5 points out of the playoffs. They do have 3 games in hand, so I'm not willing to write them off yet. I still think there's something to this team still. The Buffalo Sabres have been on a ripper, 7-2-1. They won 4 in a row. Tage Thompson is God, and they are only 6 points back with 3 games in hand. I'm not willing to write them off yet either. Where are you at with the Wings and the Sabres? Well, let's just start with the Wings and catching that wild card. What do you think? What do you think here? How hopeful are you?
Oh, yeah.
Because I know there's the fan in you that goes, yeah, if we win all 3 of those games, we're in the playoffs, motherfucker. Like, we can do this.
Well, the one thing I will say in their favor is they've dealt with a lot of injuries, right? Dylan Larkin's missed a little bit of time here lately. But more importantly, Jacob Vrana, right? He's come back from the NHL assistant program. And so, he's been traveling with the team, and I think he'll probably be ready to go after the new year here. So you'll probably see him back pretty soon. But Tyler Bertuzzi's been gone with injury. So when you don't have consistent guys in and out of the lineup all the time, when you're not able to develop that chemistry, I think, and then given, Lucas Raymond hasn't played as well as he did last year, and same with Moritz Seider. And so I think, if those 2 guys can figure it out and get that sophomore slump out of the way, and they get some guys back from injury, I think Detroit can be competitive. And they've got good goaltending this year, which has been fantastic. Ville Husso's been phenomenal for them. So I think all those things, and if, maybe they make a move at the deadline, I'm not sure if they're going to plan to or not, or spend some assets. I doubt Steve Yzerman will. Again, I think he wants to see where they're at the end of the year and then make, some more moves accordingly. But, I think this team's got enough talent where they can push for a playoff spot, but ultimately I just don't know if they have enough, right? I just worry because that back end, right, there's just not enough outside of, Hronek and Seider to really give them that back end offense. And I don't think, the bottom 6 produces consistently enough for them to where I would say, okay, cool, I think they can get enough depth scoring to compete, right? So I think, depending on when guys come back from injury and how healthy this team can remain, I think they'll be competitive and they'll be there close, but they just ultimately won't finish because, again, another team you mentioned, Buffalo, has been pushing too, and I think they're going to give Detroit a lot of trouble down the road too.
And Buffalo, I think, is surging in a way that Detroit hopes to be surging in a year or two. Buffalo's kind of like, when you look at, Buffalo's a plus 18. They are the only team outside of the playoffs that are a plus. And they're a plus 18. Oh, the Islanders are plus 10. And they're a plus 18. They've been blowing teams out in some way. Like, they're just having a great stretch here.
They've scored more goals than anybody else in this conference.
Yeah. It's been really fun to see. Have they scored more goals than anyone else in the league? Yes, they have. Highest scoring team in the league. I think when you look at the Sabres, you see a team that's definitely on the rise. When I look at the Wings, I see a team that had a really nice start. They're more competitive. They're actually enjoyable to watch. You can see the pieces coming together. This certainly is not going to be the team that is here when they're making the playoffs. But I also wonder, you've got a few UFA. I mean, Dylan Larkin aside, Dylan Larkin's going to get signed. I'm certain that Larkin is waiting for Horvat, and Horvat's probably waiting for Larkin. Basically, whatever each of those guys gets signed for, it's going to be very similar. Although Horvat is probably a little ahead in the scheme, because he's got 20 plus goals right now, and Larkin's sitting at a point per game. Though I can't complain at all about what Larkin's done, and Larkin's probably on the level of Matthew Barzal. He's probably signing for somewhere in the neighborhood of 9 to 10 million. He's going to stay in Detroit. He's the captain of this team. He's from the area. He's going to stay. That's not a problem. But you look at Pius Suter, Oscar Sundqvist, Adam Ern, Ole Mata, Jake Wallman, Osterley. Like, there are some, and even Nedeljkovic. Nedeljkovic, probably no playoff team's going to want him. But Tyler Bertuzzi, I know he's hurt right now, but he's a UFA at the end of the year. I don't know if the Red Wings see him as a long-term player. Like, do they want to go out and sign him to probably what's going to be a 5-year deal, is what Tyler Bertuzzi could fetch on the open market? Are they going to want to give him 5 years? Probably not. Five times... Shoot, do you think he's a $7 million player, Tyler Bertuzzi? 5 times 6?
I mean, he could, on the right team. He could fetch $7 million because he brings a little bit of that sandpaper, which I know those Matthew Tkachuk.
Right, I was going to say he's a poor man's Matthew Tkachuk. So he's not going out and getting $10 million, but he certainly is going to be in the 6-7 range, probably more 6.5. But with the cap going up, that's also that's going to impact that number too. They have some players that they could deal, and I got to think, if in a month, this is separated out to 7 or 8 points out of the playoffs, I don't think that Yzerman's going to go, well, let's spend some resources and bring in maybe a defenseman, a cheap defenseman. Like, I don't think that Yzerman, let's say the Red Wings are within 3 points of the playoffs. I could see Yzerman spending a 4th round pick, bringing in a number 5 defenseman, just to say, you know what, you guys have worked hard. I'm going to help you. I'm going to bring in someone, see what you guys can do, and let's give you an opportunity down the stretch to play some meaningful games. But if there's 6 to 8 points out of it come end of January, I think Suter is probably gone. Sundqvist is gone. I got to think one of these defensemen is going to be jettisoned, especially Osterley being able to play the right side. He'd be a pretty valuable trade chip there. I can't see Yzerman spending anything on the hope of making the playoffs this year when it really doesn't matter a whole lot. And this is a damn good draft. You don't want to lose those 2 second-round picks that you have, because those guys that fall into the second round, you've got a chance to really hit on someone there because of how deep this draft is.
Right, and that's the other thing too, right? I think Yzerman knows that, and if you are 10 points out come February, close to March, I think you could easily move a guy like Tyler Bertuzzi for a 1st round pick for a team that, for example, maybe a team like Colorado, who could really use a nice second line winger to play alongside, with Mikko Rantanen or Landeskog, whomever you want to, shuffle the lines with. You could probably fetch a 1st round pick, and in a draft this deep, right, that 1st round pick would be even more valuable than say, the last couple of years. You might be saying, well, look how valuable this 1st round pick is, and that might be the only pick included. But yeah, I mean, let's be honest, if there's 16 playoff teams, all of them would love to have Tyler Bertuzzi on their team come the start of the playoffs. A guy has he ever? I don't think he's ever played in the playoffs. That's 2015 is the last time the Wings made it, or 16. It's been a while.
No, he's never played in the NHL playoffs. He did play in the playoffs 1 year for the Grand Rapids Griffins and only had 19 points in 19 games with 9 goals. But that was a while ago. That was 2016-17. That's the last time he played a playoff game in general. So, but you got to think Tyler Bertuzzi would be a great guy to have in the playoffs. Would love to have him on on my team for sure. But yes, I think that the Wings probably in the end they dish some of those guys off. But if they're within 2 or 3 points, I think that Yzerman would be willing to go at very least. Well, it's not worth it to us to trade some of these guys away for a third round pick when, we got to reward these guys. They've played well all year. We're going to let them stick this out and see if they can make the playoffs. And maybe we'll spend a fourth round pick and add a small piece just to, mix it up a little bit. But it looks like the way things are going for the teams around them, it sure looks like Buffalo's going to jump them. You got to think that Florida is going to jump them. But my goodness, Florida has just been dreadful. They are the worst defensive team in the Eastern Conference outside of the Columbus Blue Jackets, who have had everyone and their mother go down.
I know, right? I mean, look, Florida's obviously missing Sasha Barkov, right? I mean, when you lose your captain, you lose your top offensive player, that hurts, right?
Sure.
But I will say,
but this team was so much bigger than just Barkov, so much bigger than Huberdeau, and the lines that they had. I mean, they had the best fourth line of hockey. Their fourth line was better than most teams' third line, some second line. So I mean, yes, I know they lost Mason Marchment, but they lose their defenseman.
Mackenzie Weegar.
Yeah.
I mean, look, you've got Mark Stahl basically trying to replace the minutes that Mackenzie Weegar was giving you. And I mean, it clearly shows, right? I mean, when your top four, outside of Aaron Ekblad is, Forsling, Montour, and Mark Stahl, that's a concern for me. I mean, don't get me wrong, nothing against Montour and Forsling. I think they're good second line guys, but and then looking at the forward group, you've got Eric Stahl centering your third line, and I like Eric Stahl, and I think he'll
scored
probably
the other night, yeah.
Right, yeah. I mean, he's not bad, but he's not a guy that I want to rely on to provide the offense for this team. He's a guy that I want to step in there to win some faceoffs and chip in every once in a while.
Fourth line, right? Maybe play him on the second power play, stick him in front of the net, kind of thing. Yeah.
Right, but these guys in the top six are just, outside of Matthew Tkachuk, have just not been producing well enough. I think Anton Lundell finally getting back from injury. He'll start getting going again, and the other part is one of their top scorers from last year, Anthony Duclair, because of the cap hell they put themselves in, they're probably going to have to deal him when he's healthy, because I know he's been skating and they're, projecting him to come back here in the next few weeks. So, when he finally does come back, they're probably going to have to get rid of him because they just can't afford to activate him.
Yeah, or get rid of somebody. Yeah.
Yeah, so somebody making some good money like Carter Verhaeghe, which I don't think they would want to deal, but again, a big name player is going to have to go to make room for Anthony Duclair, and I think it's just easier to deal him because given his salary, he'll get a better return.
I think because Hornqvist is on LTIR and that space isn't used right now, I think that makes up for it. Like that can get them over the hump. I think.
I don't know. I mean, right now they're sitting at 1.3 as far as cap space, and deadline space they've got 1.3. So I don't know if that's enough, to be quite honest. I mean, maybe they get lucky and they get another injury. I mean, you don't want to say that, right?
Yeah, you get lucky and get an injury. There you go.
I don't. But I honestly think they're going to probably lose him for next to nothing. And I think they might get a third round pick back. Maybe a second if they're lucky, but.
Yeah, suddenly this is not boding well for Paul Maurice, who leaves a team that he couldn't wrangle together and goes to the President's Trophy winners, and he also can't make this work defensively. His teams are just bad defensively, and you got to wonder about that. Like, what would this team look like had the assistant coach of the what's that? The team that has blown everyone up in the league, the New Jersey Devils. If he had just stayed as the head coach, a guy who was basically coach of the year almost, and gets let go. Like, how dumb. And maybe that's on Bill Zito, not so much Paul Maurice. It's not his fault he got the job. It's Bill Zito's fault for letting a guy go who this team obviously trusted, liked to play the system that they played, and they. You know what they did? You know what the Florida Panthers, it looks like what they did? It looks like they did what the Washington Capitals did after losing to Montreal. in what, 2009 was it, or 2010, whenever, when they lose that series and they go, oh, we're not tough enough, we don't play good enough defense, and that's like Ovechkin's lowest scoring year of his career, and everyone they bring Adam Oates in and everyone hates him. And the Capitals just, I mean, the Capitals still were okay, but they did not win. And it looks like the Panthers maybe made that same mistake. They hit their trigger finger was a little itchy, and yeah, unfortunately, it's just we're not working out, especially with how the Sabres are surging. The Red Wings are better. I'd say the only team not better, funny enough, the only team not better in this division is the Tampa Bay Lightning. They're the only team that's not better than they were last year, and they're still third in the division. They still look fine. The Lightning are still a pretty good team. They just, frankly, I'll say the Lightning kind of look like a shell of what they were winning those cups. Like, they just don't have all their pieces now. It remains to be seen if they can add at the deadline again, like they have the last few years. You got to wonder, though, do the Lightning just kind of go, let's make the playoffs, let's see what this core can do, let's see if we can win? I mean, they don't have their first round pick this year, or a second round pick, or a first round pick next year. It's going to be kind of tough for the Tampa Bay Lightning to go in and win a cup this year and to push once again. Do you agree with that? Do you think that the Lightning should just sit, or do you see a team that maybe could still do some damage?
I still think they can do some damage, honestly. I mean, look, we know they lost Andre Palat. They've lost some key pieces. McDonough's gone. But I still look at this team, and as long as you have Kucherov, Stamkos, Point, you've got Sergachev, Hedman, and you've got Vasilevsky, arguably one of the top 3 goaltenders in the league, in my opinion. Once you still got those pieces, I don't worry about this team, right? I mean, they're still going to be good in the playoffs. Now, what's more concerning for me is, how are Brandon Hagel and Nicholas Paul going to fare in the playoffs now that they've got these more elevated roles within the team? And I think right now, regular season, they've looked pretty good. But how's that going to translate to playoff success? I don't know yet. And obviously this year we'll have to see, because, now they don't have to, they don't have to shelter those guys on the third line. They've got to play them in top 6 roles because they're paying them. And they obviously, like with the two first round draft picks they gave up for Hagel, right? They gave away all that, that capital to get these guys. So they're going to have to produce. And I think right now they look pretty good, but
I mean, it's not as if the Tampa Bay Lightning are a bad team, but I mean, let's be honest. Let's put this into perspective of the entire conference. If we were playing the old 1-8, 2-7 kind of vibe, the Tampa Bay Lightning are 7th in this conference. I mean, they're just behind the Rangers in 7th place. They would be playing the Carolina Hurricanes in the first round, and I don't like their chances against the Hurricanes. And honestly, I think that the Leafs should have beaten them last year in the playoffs. I think that Tampa Bay was very fortunate to get out of that series. That was probably the team that gave them the most hell in the Eastern Conference before they ultimately lose to the Colorado Avalanche, who also, funny enough, look like a shell of themselves, granted without McKinnon and Landeskog and all the rest. But the Tampa Bay Lightning, to me, they're still a good team. They're still a playoff team. But I do think that this is the year that they maybe take that step back. They don't make it out of the first round, and they get an opportunity to reset, which I think they're going to have to do. I mean, this is going to be, after this year, your next UFAs, Alex Killorn, Nemesnikov, whatever. You've got Ian Cole's a UFA. You're starting to see some of these guys peel back, and you're going to need to find some younger guys to fill in. I mean, Alex Killorn is obviously not the Alex Killorn of even 2 years ago. 23 points so far this year, but he had a good regular season last year, and then goes into the playoffs and puts up an absolute nothing burger, 0 goals, 4 assists in 23 games. I got to think this is probably going to be Alex Killorn's last run with the Lightning. Someone's going to pay him okay money to come in and try and replicate what he did, for a couple years, but I just don't. With Sergachev's contract, Cernak's contract, and Cirelli all due for that extension kick in next year, there's very little cap room to come back and re-sign Killorn unless he just goes, you know what, I'll come back for $1 million or $2 million or something like that. But I don't see him doing that. I see him taking the Palat route, and I just think now is the time for Tampa to go, you know what, we're not probably going to win the Cup this year. Let's just run into the playoffs, see what we can do. Maybe you spend a late round pick to bring in someone just to provide some depth, see what you can do. Maybe you can get out of the first round and go on another run. But it's probably unlikely, and you're better off just kind of saving up and seeing if you can, make some tweaks to this lineup to be able to become great again, because they certainly have the ability with Kucherov, Point, and Stamkos still rocking. I think there's still at least another run or two left in this team, and of course Vasilevsky.
Yeah, I mean, the question mark, right? They're obviously if the standings play out the way they are right now, and I think they probably will, we're going to see them play Toronto again in the first round. And I'm interested to hear your thoughts on Toronto being able to grind a little bit more, because that's ultimately where I think if they have to play Tampa in the first round, it's going to come down to, because Tampa knows how to block shots. They know how to play that grinding, style of hockey that the playoffs usually birth. And they've looked like a better defensive team this year. They're getting much better goaltending. I should say consistent goaltending this year. So if that all stays, the way I hope it will stay, and especially with Morgan Rielly coming back, maybe they make a move at a deadline to bring in another defensive piece, or maybe even a depth forward. Can this Toronto team, compete with the Tampas that have, shown that, they just need to get in, right?
Yeah, when I watch the Leafs this year in comparison to last year and any previous year, you definitely see a team that's more committed to the defensive side, and it's coming from their forwards. Frankly, Mitch Marner, if he's not a candidate for the Selke this year, then I don't know what more you got to do as a guy who puts up huge numbers, is probably the best penalty killing winger in the NHL, and is consistently showing highlights defensively, always in the right place at the right time. He's proven himself. I think where a lot of people thought that Matthews might become that, he'll score goals, but he's also, Matthews is a good defensive centerman as well, but obviously the focus is on the goal scoring. I think that Marner has really, really become that guy, and I think that it's infectious the way that he plays. It's just making the rest of the team better defensively too. Bringing in a Calle Yarncroke, guys who have someone who has played his entire career as someone who can play both sides of the puck. David Kampf has. I talked about it last year. I think we did a mid-season award show, and I said, David Kampf. Look at him for the Selke, because he was taking I think 85% of his faceoffs were in the defensive zone. The guy is just a juggernaut defensively, killing every penalty. He's been great for the Leafs, and I think has really grown into that role for Sheldon Keefe. They finally, I think, are in a place where they're willing to do what it takes. They're blocking shots. They're committed to the defensive side, and I think you've seen that with. Hey, there has been a decline in the amount of goals that this team is scoring, but it's on purpose. And they're saying, yeah, we're purposely trying much harder to keep the puck out of our net than we have in the past. And it's certainly showing. And I think you're now seeing, if this were any other team, if this were the Boston Bruins are doing this just on an even better scale. If this were the New Jersey Devils, if this were the Winnipeg Jets, just you're any team, you'd go, wow, this team is incredible defensively, and they're going to win in the first round. I think, and it's just because the history, the Leafs haven't been able to get out of the first round, yada yada. I think everything's poised for them to win. That doesn't mean they're going to win, but I think they should be heavily favored to win. In this first round matchup. It's shown up in the games that they've played against Tampa recently. The Leafs have just been the better team, and that's without Morgan Rielly. That's without, we think Jake Muzzin will be out the rest of the year anyways, but so kind of a moot point, but they did it without TJ Brody in the first game. this team is committed defensively, and it's showing. And I think come playoff time, that's where it's going to go, oh, this is a different team. This is a different team than what we've seen because of that. And hopefully they can keep playing that way all year. It is only 30 games.
Yeah, and let me ask you, too, I mean, looking at the numbers, do you think this team, outside of, obviously, we know the top 4 scorers on this Ford group, do you think outside of those 4 guys, they have enough scoring, depth-wise on their third and fourth line to compete?
Well, I mean, I do think they'll make some acquisition here in the next 3 months. I think you'll see them bring someone in. They do have a lot of cap space accruing right now with all the injuries that they've had. So in the end, that's a benefit. They'll have the $5 million that Jake Muzzin is allotted for. They'll be able to go out and acquire a scorer, and I think you'll see that. I also recently there has been some more offense coming from those bottom 2 lines, and some of it I think you're going, well, those bottom lines are a lot of times playing with their defenseman back there is what it's been Victor Mete, Jordy Ben. It's been these guys who are really barely NHL defensemen, or if they're 5-6 defensemen and they're not getting the time with these better guys. Rasmus Sandin, of course, goes down too for the Leafs. So I mean that's not helping. But you've got Engvall's been scoring a little bit more recently. Yarncroke, who again, remember this is a new team. Yarncroke started to score a little bit more, and I think you're going to see those bottom 6 lines kind of find the back of the net here moving forward. But their top 2 lines are so good. And Bunting has been much better the last 15 games than he was in the first 19. And I think you're seeing the kind of player that you want Bunting to be. Kerfoot's been a little bit better. So I think some of this was that commitment to defense, and that maybe it was a little bit harder to also score and be really committed defensively. And now they're really starting to reap the benefits of playing that way. And guys are starting to score a little bit more. So I think by
the answer.
What's that?
Said Dryden Hunt is the answer.
Yes, of course, yes. Had to get rid of Dennis Morgan. Connor Timmins has looked good. Like there's all sorts of things to like about this team, and it's the downside or the upside of injury is you get a lot of opportunities for guys who wouldn't normally. So I think that for the playoffs, that is wonderful. Guys like Liljegren, I know Sandin's hurt, but he was given lots of opportunities and has played well. There are guys who deserved a chance and are getting it, and they're shining. Giordano's been as good as you can ever ask for a 40-year-old defenseman to be as a number 1 defenseman for a team for a while. I like a lot of what this team has done, and I think that you have to expect they're going to go out and they're going to spend. I mean, there's no reason to not at least trade something to be able to bring in a scorer, and there's going to be plenty of free agents on some of these teams that are way out of the playoffs, and we'll find out what they ultimately do. But every team brings in someone at the deadline, right? Like that just is going to happen. Let's see. Do any other as far as the playoff race? Boston finishing number 1. I think we're both there. I don't think anyone's going to catch them, especially if they never lose at home ice in regulation. 18-0-2. My goodness. As far as that, I guess there is a race between Tampa, Detroit, Buffalo, right? Like even if they don't end up catching those wild card teams, there still is that 3-4 in the division. But I don't think either of us see Tampa falling that far. Yeah.
No. I think Tampa ultimately will finish at number 3. It's just a question mark of whether or not Detroit, Buffalo, or Florida even can push for one of those wild card spots. I think that's the biggest question mark. And honestly, if I had to choose out of the 3, I would probably take Buffalo just because I like offensively their ability to score so much. I think they're just entertaining, and again, they could come in and shock a few teams here down the stretch.
Yep, I agree. They will definitely, at very least, be a spoiler. The playoff race is really the Metropolitan Division. I think the Atlantic is probably pretty set, which is sort of unfortunate. Like, you were hoping for a little bit of a race. Now, Detroit does have those games in hand. We'll see if they can win some of those. By the way, Detroit's game was postponed today. It was supposed to be played in Ottawa, and they have postponed it because of inclement weather. So I don't know when that actually happened, but I just saw the notification for it. So they will not be playing that game, which maybe is fortunate since they lost 6-3 just a week ago to the Ottawa Senators. So maybe they just need to push that game down the road a little bit. But they'll start their Christmas early. So I'm sure no one on the Red Wings or the Senators minds having that game canceled and kick it down the can a little bit, or down the road. Any final thoughts on the playoff races in the Eastern Conference before we get out of here?
I can't wait to see if, speaking of the Eastern Conference playoff race, and Ottawa's clearly out of it, I just can't wait to see if they start jettisoning pieces here pretty soon. So that'll be fun to watch. Yeah,
I know. Yeah. I mean, I don't think they're going to ditch Alex DeBrincat. I think they traded too much to get him, and I mean, he's a point per game player right now. I know he's not looking like he's going to put up 40. He's looking like he's going to put up 20, 25 goals, but I think he'll find that. Sometimes it just takes guys a long time to get used to a new team, especially when they've been in one place their whole career. And it's not as if if Alex DeBrincat right now had 18 goals instead of 10, I doubt that Ottawa is in much of a different position. Because probably, you got to think, well, someone else is sometimes scoring that goal instead. Maybe he has fewer assists, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't think that maybe it gives Ottawa an extra win. But that's still, if Ottawa has an extra win, they maybe are ahead of Montreal instead. So I don't think that it makes a huge difference. He's not the reason they're losing. But yeah, it will be fun. I think Ottawa, I think Philadelphia, there's a lot of interest there. It would be fun to see Van Riemsdyk go somewhere, assuming that you can ditch his contract in a couple places to get that number down. I think Tarasenko, I think that this is probably the time for him to get dealt. And he wanted to get dealt a couple years ago, or even just last year, he wanted to get dealt, and it never happened. Things went well in St. Louis. Now things aren't going so well. We'll talk a little bit more about that in our Western Conference playoff race show, but I think that Tarasenko is probably a hot trade chip for St. Louis, especially the amount of teams that could really use a goal scorer. I got to imagine that there's a team out there who would be willing to give up at least a second-round pick for Tarasenko, if not a first-round pick, to be able to get a guy who, come playoff time, has been pretty good. So,
yep, I'm looking at you, Rangers.
Stanley Cup. Yeah, the Rangers, I mean, I think we're all looking at Patty Kane, and then maybe Tarasenko's the consolation prize.
Yeah, but how long do you wait on Patrick Kane, right? I mean, that's the question mark.
Well, you're going to probably have to wait until, when's the trade deadline?
March. Gosh.
It is March the 3rd.
Okay, yep.
Yeah, and then you're also, now all of a sudden Bo Horvat's on that radar. I am not positive that he's going to get dealt. I know all the stuff came out about him, he declined a contract offer, but that's stupid. Do you know how many times contract offers get turned down and then they sign something different? Who cares if one offer was turned down? It doesn't matter.
Yeah, there's been a lot of times where guys, don't re-sign all year, and then you get like 2 days before the free agency period opens and they re-sign. So.
I.e. Malkin.
Yep, absolutely.
But I also think Vancouver's got a lot of. I think they'll have to they'll deal Besser first before they even think about dealing Bo Horvat. I mean, he only has 22 goals in 32 games. So. Yeah,
only.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of guys who could be available at the deadline, and especially scorers. Like, there's not much in terms of the defensive side. I'm not super excited about what's out there for that. Gurianov in Columbus is out there, and
Tyler Myers
and Gossip. Yeah, there's some okay names. I mean, of course, Jacob Chikrin, but that's a much bigger deal, and I'm not sure what playoff team is going to give up as much as Arizona wants for him during the season. I mean, off season, he's going to go somewhere. I don't know he gets dealt during the season. I'm not sure. Not sure that happens. Maybe someone gets desperate. And I'm sure that's what Arizona's waiting for. Arizona's waiting for a playoff team or a team that's on the bubble to get desperate enough to give them that extra piece that they're hoping that extra piece turns into a player that plays for them, right? So it's fair. I'm just not sure that there's the teams that might do it. I'm not sure they're in a position to do it right now. That would be my hang up on that deal, but we will find out. Well, that is our show. You can find us on Twitter at OT Hockey Talk, and on our next show we'll do the Western Conference playoff race. But until then, if you have snow coming or it's already there, stay warm. Don't have a heart attack shoveling. Don't do that. That's
right.
Bad. We only have so many listeners. We can't afford to lose you. We'll just say that. No, even if we had 1 million listeners, which we don't, just a hair below that, but we don't want to lose any of you. And Justin, I hope you have a Merry Christmas. And Merry Christmas to all those out there, or whatever it is that you celebrate on the 25th of December. Yeah, hope you have a Merry Christmas, Justin.
Yeah, you too, Mark.
What'd you get me?
Merry Christmas. What did I get you? A day without having to listen to my awful voice anymore.
Oh, well, that's like an anti-gift.
Oh,
Sounds
okay.
terrible. All right, well, that's us. We'll talk to you guys soon.